Every music teacher is always preaching the value of practicing scales. I'll spare you the lecture on that subject right now, even though it is true. I'll admit that practicing scales can be pretty boring, and for being the musical basis for almost everything we play, they can sound pretty boring too. And here I'll prove it. So there's the boring way, the way that we're all taught to play these major scales. And it's, I'm not going to go into how you actually play them. You can watch that, What is a Major Scale? But you can see I'm just playing these notes in really straight time. I'm going straight up the 8 notes, and then I'm starting over on the 8th note and coming back down. And to me, that's pretty boring. Hearing that reminds me of the torture my dear old mom had to endure with a house full of kids trying to learn how to play. Now let me show you a couple of simple ways to make your scale practice sound a little bit more musical. Here's the first idea. It's something I call time shifting. Okay, that's the time-shifted version. And all I've done here is duplicated the first note of the scale. And by doing so, that pushed all the other notes to the right one slot. And that puts our landing note up there at the first beat of the second measure. And so it kind of makes more musical sense because you're landing on the root on the downbeat of a measure instead of at the tail end of a measure, which is the way the old boring way works. I'm not really sure why that sounds better, but to me it does. Let's look at a second way to make the scale repeat nicely that sounds pretty good too. This one I call extending over the top. All right, this is the version called extending over the top, and all we're doing here is going beyond the octave. We're going on up into the second octave by one note. So we've got the first note, second note, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth. You could also call that 1. That's the beginning of the next octave, so we're going to go on up past that to a 2 note, which is our open E string. And the reason I want to go up to that note is so that when you play the second measure, you don't end on the root. We end on the 2, which then makes it seem like it makes perfect sense to start over, because that puts, at the end of the second measure, it causes you to play on the root at the start of the first measure, if that makes any sense. So in essence, we've sort of time shifted a little bit in the second measure. We're just trying to make that root land on the beat. So by going on up over the top, that causes that to happen automatically. And it wants to go right there to start it over. Here's one more modification to the major scale. This time we're going to play something called the Bebop Scale. Jazz players use this scale a lot, and so do bluegrass players. And the name sounds maybe a little bit scary, but it's really pretty easy. All we're going to do is sneak in one extra note. Let me show you. All right, there's that bebop scale. The only thing we're doing here is if you look in, well, let me take it up one note at a time. First note, second note, third note, fourth note are all unchanged. The next 4, normally we'd be playing a 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to go 5, 6, flat 7, 7, 8. So we're doing a little chromatic passage there, right there. And you can see that I'm landing with my 3rd finger on that 4th fret note and sliding it up as I go to the root on top. Like that. Now it is potentially possible that you could play that top note with your little finger if you wanted to. A lot of guitar players who've converted to mandolin would naturally want to do it that way. And you can do that if you like. I think it's more Mando-esque to use that third finger and slide up, and that keeps us in our normal mandolin type fingering. Second measure, we're coming back down that same little chromatic passage with that inserted extra note, but this time instead of sliding the third finger, we're going to come on down third, second, first, first. So we're going to put our slide with our first finger. And when I say slide, I don't really mean play the note and slide it. We're going to pick it both times. I mean, we're just going to slide our finger, which is obvious by the fingering notations there. When you see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3, that means third finger's playing both notes. But you can definitely pick them in both directions with the pick. So there's your bebop scale. Well, hopefully that gives you some new ways to look at major scales and makes your practice sessions a little bit more enjoyable. Try these out on all the other major scales you practice. And if you don't know how to make a major scale, go watch my free lesson called What is a Major Scale? Take care, and I'll see you in the next lesson.